You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 228, and my name is Clark from 5cardguys.com and 5cardguys on Instagram. Co-hosting with me, as usual, is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards, also on IG. John's away this week, but once his summer schedule slows down, we'll have him back soon. Okay, later in this episode, we'll be playing the interview that our hobby friend, Iowa Dave, had with me as the guest on his podcast called The Shallow End. And if you've never heard of his podcast before, please do check it out. I'll include the link in our show notes below. But he focuses on sports cards that you can collect on a budget, which is almost the opposite of what we tend to talk about on our pod, which is higher end cards and the hobby news that come from these big sales. But what I like about Dave's podcast is that it highlights a segment of the hobby I'm sure many collectors can relate to, whether they're just starting out and they don't want to spend a lot of money to begin with, or even to those collectors like us actually, who are nostalgic about cards that might not be valued as much financially, but it's still very meaningful for the collector because, you know, it features one of their favorite players perhaps, or it comes from a unique set. Anyone who collected in the junk wax era can certainly relate to that. So that's a quick shout out to Iowa Dave and his pod, and stick around for that interview featuring me. Okay, off the top today, I know this is a couple weeks old, but I wanted to get our 2 cents on this topic that Cage Lawyer really got going after his YouTube video called Breaker's Delight, or is it Collector's Demise? And you should definitely check it out for yourself. But in that video, he makes a point about the Breaker's Delight boxes, which is the only box that you can hit the Legends autographed cards from the 2024 Topps Chrome set, like the Ken Griffey Jr. and Sandy Koufax. That means in the hobby boxes and even jumbo boxes, you can't get those hits, which have some collectors up in arms. First, the social media post by Topps, I would say, wasn't fully transparent, as it made it look like you can hit those Legends autograph cards in all the boxes. And I think the bigger issue is, and I think for Cage, is that it shows that Fanatics really cares more about the breakers than they do about the average collectors in the hobby who would only really have access to hobby boxes. So there's a lot to unpack there, but Hyung, what was your first thought when you heard about this blowing up?
Man, yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm just putting out a disclaimer. Either way, I'm just an outside watcher giving my 2 cents. It's not saying that I believe in Fanatics in any way in terms of like what they're doing or their intentions. I can't question why they do it. I'm just looking from kind of like outside in, but I think there's a lot of miscommunication involved in this. I think what people have to understand is Breaker's Delight boxes are available to everyone. So it's no different than an HTA box. It's always been in the hobby. You know, breakers like to break HTA boxes because it skips out all the base cards. So I get it. You know, it's been around. Nothing's changed. They might have rebranded or renamed it to Breaker's Delight because maybe Fanatics' intention is to kind of promote breaking, which, you know, we've kind of predicted in the past, and it's obviously a whole different subject of, you know, complexities, because at the end of the day, just on the breaking aspect, I've participated in breaks and I love them. I think they're super convenient. I've hit some great cards that, you know, I probably wouldn't have hit if I just bought my own box, right? Because sometimes I'm like, you know what? I have a better chance at, you know, buying into a break on a certain team in a whole case rather than my own one jumbo box that costs more than the break, right? So at the end of the day, I was and this was before even COVID, I've entered breaks. It's very convenient for me as a customer. So how can I say that breaking is wrong, right? It's benefited me, but like I said, I get it because it on the other side of things, it may spread the wrong message, to our youth, which I also get, right? But like I said, I can't control outside influences. I can only control what I believe in. But yeah, I think there's a lot of miscommunication overall in this whole topic, and I think Cage's kind of argument was the transparency that Fanatics didn't show necessarily to that you can't hit those legendary autos in certain boxes, and to me that's also normal. I don't think there's an issue with that if it's only in HTAs. We've seen it in previous products before, in flagship products, clear acetate only available in hobby, and I believe retail too, but you can't pull it in jumbos, for instance, and vice versa. There's HTA choice parallels only in HTA boxes, right? So I don't think there's any issue there, and I think it's more the lack of communication from a Fanatic standpoint that, listen, if you're looking for legendary autos, you can only find it in, our Breakers Delight, which is available to everyone.
Right. That's, I would agree with that. And I think I do get where Cage is coming from, though. Like when I saw top social media posts about these legend autos, I assumed, and that's on me, but I assume that you can hit those in hobby boxes and jumbo boxes. Right. And to be fully fair to Topps, if you go on their website, there are a couple links that you can see the checklist and you can see the odds of hitting the different hits. And there's a chart that shows that legend autos are only available in Breakers Delight boxes. At the same time, and I think Cage makes this point too, the links are hard to find on the website, right? So if you are doing your own research, which a lot of breakers seem to be countering in their argument, it's not as easy as you might think, okay? So there's responsibility on both sides. I think we can all do better in terms of this communication issue. And the HEA boxes, I've heard, and I don't know if it's the marketing now, calling it Breakers Delight. I wonder if it is easier for breakers to get those Breakers Delight boxes. I wonder if there's like an allocation. I don't know, right? Like even that, I would appreciate more transparency on. Is it available?
It's available online for anyone to purchase, but I think it becomes more of a cash flow thing, right? Because breakers have money allocated to buying tons of product versus us who, if we're just retailers, we're just looking to purchase, one box, because Breakers Delight boxes aren't cheap, right? And
it's double the hobby box. Yes, so right. That's a good point.
And at the end of the day, as long as the odds all make sense, that's what we're looking for. And I think there's a miscommunication or misunderstanding on that front, that people think, oh, there's better hits in Breakers Delight boxes. It's like, no, man, the format is totally different in Breakers Delight boxes, and they're priced accordingly. And the odds are probably very similar based on price. Of course, you could audit it and probably maybe pick out one or two things that kind of like, hey, this works in favor for Breakers Delight, maybe, or vice versa. It might actually work against it in terms of the odds. Who knows? And I'm sure there's smarter people than me out there that, love to do this on their free time, and, they could figure out the odds and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I don't think they're doing anything new. This has always been kind of in the hobby, in just in a different marketing capacity.
One difference I would argue, though, is that there's a perceived discrepancy between the quality of hits between the hobby and jumbo boxes versus the Breakers Delight. Like the Legend Autos are the best hits that people will agree on from 2024 Topps Chrome. On-card autos by these legends. We all want them. Topps is advertising that these hits are available, but they're only in Breakers Delight boxes compared to, and I think this is what Cage really going. And I'm sure not just Cage, but he got what? His one chrome autograph hit from the hobby box was Weston Wilson, a 29-year-old rookie that has 6 major league at bats. You know what I mean? It's like that's going for $5 to $10 of a $200 US hobby box. That's rough. And at the same time, that's usually how my ribs go, right?
Yeah.
I don't hit it, but I think when you see that, oh, you can get these major hits, but I don't even have a chance at getting those hits in hobby. Like, I think it's a combination of these things that really got people riled up. You know, not that it's
and I think that's something
but
that Topps has to kind of use as kind of feedback. It's
Agreed.
like maybe the solution to that is, legendary autos should be available even in blasters and all across, the product. Whether it's a certain percentage allocated, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I think those are little things that will make the hobby better. As the majority feedback say, hey, this is what we really like. But if it's a fundamental thing like trying to get rid of breakers, I think that's like, it's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Yeah. So it's like that's all I'm kind of presenting, I guess. Make it in a presentable, digestible, logical way of how we could navigate through these issues together as a whole hobby, as a whole community. Right. Because at the end of the day, if it's going to be arguments of whether breakers should exist or not, that's not even going to push the needle. Like, that's not going to do anything and nobody good, because you're not going to win that battle regardless. Regardless of what side you sit on, it's better to just let it be. And then as things progress, you see what problems exist, and those problems start being addressed as we grow the hobby in general.
Yeah, and that's, I agree with you 100%. I just released a newsletter for anyone that subscribes to the 5 Card Guys news monthly newsletter, but I think we still need breakers, because there's a segment of the hobby that enjoy the breaking aspect of it, and guess what? That's going to help grow the hobby. But we also need other parts to work well within the hobby to grow the hobby. It's not either or. It's about let's incorporate all of these different segments together and grow the hobby together. So to your point, I don't think we're getting rid of breaking. I think it's here to stay. Going back to your point about like whether Topps should take this feedback from this experience, from this backlash, and reconfigure the boxes in the future, I think that's a great point. Or I know our friend Scotty Baldwin, right, of Scotty B Cards, he did a video recently about checkflation or checklist inflation. Essentially, it was just merging those two words, and it's kind of what Cage experienced, that they're just putting a lot of, I can't even call them hits anymore. You know what I mean? With their checklist growing and veteran rookies, it's fine, but maybe you try to incorporate other really nice hits in the hobby retail boxes too. If you're going to just do legend autos and breakers delight, that's their prerogative. That's fine, and make that transparent. But maybe you do another kind of like another big chase in hobby and jumbo. Spread it out that way too.
No, I think we're gonna see a lot more of that. That's my guess. Is like I said, I think last year or something like that, there was like it was like a redemption style, like Bobby Witt Jr. jersey that you could pull, like stuff that Fanatics is going to be able to cross promote. Cool, I think they're going to be able to create a lot more value within pulls, I think, in a different way too, not just monetarily. It could be experience wise, because then you partner up with MLB experience or create like these MLB crazy experiences where those become the ultimate chase in a product, or it could be an alternative chase to the product, right? Where now you're implementing more experience based stuff that doesn't necessarily have a monetary value. So I think those are the evolution of where Fanatics is going to go to make it a lot more fair, other than just chasing parallels and autos, which we tend to do, right? Like, I think the hobby is bigger than that. So I hope that eventually goes that direction. But I also think that it's also to scale. In terms of, yeah, of course, there's going to be more parallels when more people join the hobby. Like the ratios are going to get worse and worse because, as more people,
Also true, yeah.
We say that all the time. It's like, oh, I wish, in 2003, I bought all the LeBron out of 50. It's like, exactly. It's, we're in the same situation, fast forward 20 something years later. And this is why there's a massive chase is people see what happened 20 years ago with LeBron cards, and they think the next Victor Wembanyama is that, person. So they want to get in early, or at least during that process of that, right? So it's always existed. It's just being amplified because we have something called the internet, and we could see everybody's lives. So
yeah, and like you said, it's an evolution of the hobby, right? Like even I think thinking now about it, Parallels was an evolution. As more people got into, the hobby, like we got to have more hits. So let's create something called Parallels. And now we're at the point where we're sick of Parallels, and like, what's next? And like you're just saying, maybe it's experiences, maybe it's jerseys, redemption cards for jerseys. It could be a lot of things. Yeah. So there's a lot of options out there. And I think people just need to be a little more patient. Because you know what, it's all good for the hobby, because I think this is another good indicator that the hobby is growing. And you want to have these kind of growing pains. If it's called growing pains for a reason, because something's growing and you're going to encounter new challenges as you grow, and I think you deal with it as they come. So that's one of those things that we gotta just accept and then not stay quiet about, because feedback is very important. But I think, I'm still bullish on the hobby. I'm still bullish on what Fanatics is doing. I know people don't like the F word now these days, aka Fanatics. But shout out to Fanatics for even, like I just saw this morning, they put a commercial out there in partnership with MLB, and it's going to start airing during the Summer Olympics in Paris. Like they are trying to expand the Topps brand. Yes, right? So, give credit where it's due. So I love it. I love that Cage Lawyer brings up these things. If you got to check out his YouTube, because it's one of those rare YouTube channels I just listen to his whole 15 to 20 minute rambles, because he's just speaking from the heart, and he's a valuable asset to the hobby, in my opinion. So go check out his YouTube page out, and we'll stay on top of this too. We'll see how everything pans out, because we're in it for the long haul as well. All right, with that, like I said off the top, we'll play the interview that Iowa Dave had with me on his podcast, The Shallow End. It was primarily about why I didn't go to the National. By the time this episode airs, the National will be over, but I pretty much mentioned that we're looking forward to going to FanFest with Hyung and I. We just booked our hotels, so we will be there early, kind of heads up to those who will be there as well in NYC. Please contact us at 5 Card Guys or at Cards to the Moon, and hopefully we can meet up. Hopefully we can produce content together. That's why we're going. We want to just really connect with all of you and produce valuable content for our followers and subscribers. So yeah, reach out to us, and then we'll hopefully be able to do something together. Okay, let's play that interview from The Shallow End right now.
Hello, and welcome to The Shallow End. I'm Dave Schwartz. Thank you so much for listening. Today's guest is someone who knows that the hobby is supposed to be fun. Earlier this year, Clark, today's guest, passed the 3-year anniversary on his podcast, Cards to the Moon, along with his co-hosts, John and Hyung. Clark also has the blog, 5 Card Guys. If you follow him on Instagram, he's the one who is often posting the values of cards over the period of years, like some Ronald Acuna back in October 2020, then March of 21, then 22, and then this past year. That's Clark. But for the past 3 years, Cards to the Moon has been a consistent rock here in the hobby, appearing every Tuesday in your podcast feed. Yeah, they talk about the news, but they also play lots of games. They have fun with it. They realize that the hobby is only worth being in our lives if it makes it better and if they're having some fun with it. So I wanted to have him on for a couple of reasons. One is that, like I said, he did just pass the 3-year anniversary, and that is worth celebrating. Second, he recently made a really interesting choice. He had never been to a national. He is based in Toronto, where they have the Expo, this fantastic card show, but he had always wanted to come to a national. And so he committed to going. He said, "This is the year I'm going to go." But then about a month after that, he changed his mind and decided, no, the future is Fanatics Fest. And so, still having never attended a national, he started making his plans instead to attend Fanatics Fest in New York City in August. So, we start by talking about that. From there, we talk about how to keep his show fresh for 3 years and fun and interesting. We talk about how he collects as well, the cards that he's into, and then we turn the tables on him. With his co-hosts John and Hyung, Clark usually plays the role of the game show host. They play things like over under, pick one, guess the price, all types of different games. And he's usually the one coming up with the games. But here, we turn the tables and Clark becomes the contestant. So let's get to it. Let's talk with Clark from Cards to the Moon. So, Clark, welcome to the Shallow End. You said at the beginning of the year that one of your New Year's resolutions was to finally make your first national. And this was after several years of being back in the hobby now. Mm-hmm. And then you hit the brakes. And about a month or so after that, you said, no, actually, I'm going to do Fanatics Fest.
Right.
And so we're wondering, where are you now with this? Are you still planning on going to one of them? Which one and why?
Yeah, I guess you heard those episodes early on in the year where I made this grand announcement that I was going to go to the National for the first time. And then, like you said, of course, Fanatics Fest was announced shortly thereafter. And it's a good question. I think one of the main reasons why I am pivoting and going to Fanatics Fest instead this year is multiple reasons. And I think they're all small reasons that kind of add up. So, I might get some slack for saying this, but it's funny to me that the slogan for the National is "It's cool to collect," where I feel like Fanatics is more the cool vibe, right? So maybe they should swap slogans. Whereas the National, it's kind of like the Toronto Sport Card Expo here. Huge. You got your old school heads, you got your, few newer dealers. So I imagine that would be what the National is about, except 4, 5, 6 times bigger. Right. So, and then, I've been seeing these posts about the National where a lot of these old school dealers sublease their spots, and that's been an issue. And I feel like I'm on the side where they shouldn't be allowed to do that, get some new dealers in. And on the other side of things, I've heard from a couple of dealers that are going to set up in Fanatics Fest that there was a process to get in. So they're very picky about who they selected for this first one, at least. So I think quality control might be better at Fanatics Fest. And so that's, those are just some of the reasons. No offense, New York City sounds cooler than Cleveland. That's another big factor for me. And I think the National in Chicago next year is much more appealing. So I might do that for next year, but we'll see.
I think you hit on something. Once somebody tells you that they're cool, they're not really cool.
Yes.
Right?
That's 100% true.
Right. And what happened with the dealers, it sounds like they hit right in the worst possible scenario in the middle, where they still sort of have the old heads, the old vintage dealers, who are now not allowed to sell off their booths, which means they have to come, which means you won't have any of the more exciting new inventory that some of the younger people want. So this really have boxed themselves into a corner. Yeah. So do you think that if the National had been in Chicago again this year, you might have made a different choice?
That's another good question. I think it would have been much harder for me to make that pivot. Essentially, when I heard Fanatics Fest, I jumped ship and then went to Fanatics Fest right away. The only thing that might still get me to go to Fanatics Fest this year is the fact that it's the first one. And I feel like Fanatics will go all out for this first one. They want to make a good impression. So I have, pretty high expectations of FanFest and just a bigger, greater excitement level. So yeah, so I think that's why would still lean towards Fanatics Fest. Second year might be a different story.
What are one or two of the things that you're most excited about attending a convention this size in the States? You have the expo in Toronto, which is incredible from what I've heard, and I know people who have gone and they loved it. So I don't want to say what's it like going to a real card show. No, you've been going for years,
Yeah.
but now you're putting some money, right, and some effort into it. You have to travel and get a hotel. What are you really anticipating?
Yeah, two main things for me. Ever since starting this Five Card Guys and Cards to the Moon podcast, I've gotten to know a lot of fellow collectors, fellow content creators in the hobby, and most of them are American. A lot of them will be at some of these shows, so it'll be great to connect in person. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to. And two, the one major difference between the Sports Card Expo and just generally speaking, I would say card shows in the States, the bigger ones at least, is the inventory. Like I'm Canadian and I love hockey, but my first love is baseball cards. And you don't see a lot of that at the Sports Card Expo here in Toronto. So my Canadian friends that have gone to the National, and I'm assuming that it'll be similar to Fanatics Fest, there's going to be a lot more baseball to check out. And so I'm looking forward to that as well.
Sure, especially with Fanatics owning Topps, their primary licenses right now being in baseball.
Exactly.
So that'll help. So good. Let's pump the brakes a little bit and back up to talk about your collecting background a little bit. You collected as a kid, and then when about did you get back in? We'll get to your podcast, Cards to the Moon, in just a little bit because you just celebrated the third anniversary of that. But you specifically, what is your collecting background?
Yeah, it's very similar to a lot of people that who collected as a kid. That was me, Toronto Blue Jays fan, big baseball card, and then like a lot of people, we kind of stopped as we grew older. And I know a lot of people came back during the pandemic, the nostalgia, maybe boredom at home, and then you're kind of seeing what the hobby's all about. I actually happened to, I can't even remember. I wish I remembered, but I fell across a blog, a baseball card blog, and that just got me thinking. I'm like, oh yeah, I used to collect. And this was before the pandemic, so maybe a year or two. And then I'm like, maybe I'll just go down this rabbit hole, which is what I did. And, just kind of research what's going on in the hobby. And, you learn about eBay being a primary marketplace for cards and just looking for old school players that I grew up with, seeing what their cards are worth. I grew up in the junk wax era, so I found out very quickly they're all worth under $5. And then, you learn about how the hobby has grown in the more recent years. So that interested me. So I started a blog called fivecardguys.com as well, where I just talked about different rookie cards I was chasing or that I really hope to have in my collection. And that's kind of where it started. And the name Five Card Guys is that I actually started with 4 of my friends. So there was 5 of us at one point, and hence the name. And one of my friends thought it would be funny to call it Five Card Guys because it sounds like Five Guys burgers, and we just kept it. We couldn't think of anything better. So that's the story behind the name. But those 4 guys eventually left. Like a lot of people, that came into the hobby, they found other interests. But for me, it just became a growing obsession, I guess. And
so your partners on the podcast then, John and Hyung, they were not one of the original 5.
They were not part of the original 5. Yeah, I met them afterwards in a different sports card chat group that I was invited to in Toronto. And I'm like, hey, I actually knew Hyung and John for years before. Like we played in the same like church softball leagues, and we've known of each other. And it's kind of funny that sports card brought us back together in that way. But yeah, that's how it went.
So to those of you who are listening, if you have not heard Cards to the Moon, check it out. But one thing that's been so appealing, there are a couple of things that stand out. One is it's consistent. Like you're there every Tuesday. It drops every other Friday. There's another episode. You play games. The little sounds are the same.
Right.
And the people, for the most part, are the same. And, you have other jobs. And sometimes John has to go off to work or Hyung has to go off somewhere, but you're consistent and you're there and it's fun. But there's also a tremendous chemistry. How did the three of you decide in early June of 21 that you decided you wanted to take your collecting and your fandom to a different level and start the podcast?
Yeah, no, it's kind of cool how it started because it's really was so natural for us. And like I mentioned, we were in this WhatsApp chat group about sports cards and we were chatting about it anyways. And it's like every day or every other day, hey, it's like, hey, did you check out this card? And go on eBay, here's the eBay link, go check this out. And we talked about hobby news and things like that. And I think Hyung was the one that mentioned, we should start a podcast. So we talk about it anyways. Maybe we should just record ourselves and see how it goes. And that's kind of the genesis of Cards to the Moon. And I think it helps too that we've known each other, like I mentioned just before, that we were friends before. So we love to hear that when people listen to our podcast, they say there is a certain chemistry. And I think it helped that the fact that we were friends before. So, that's, honestly, in terms of coming together to talk about sports cards, I'll prepare like a short kind of a page on what hobby topics we could talk about this episode. And it's just about riffing off of that. Like there's no real preparation, but it's more of what are our opinions on it? What do we need to do more research about? And just kind of feeding off of each other in terms of what we each say to one another. And it's just like a normal discussion. That's how we kind of hope that Cards to the Moon is, even going into the future.
Speaking of the future, if you went back, and I did go back yesterday before we talked, I listened to your original episode to see what it sounded like. And it wasn't all that different. You're more polished now, and you're definitely in the flow.
Yeah.
What do you see for Cards to the Moon going forward? What would you like to see happen for Cards to the Moon?
First, I think you're overly gracious when you say our first episodes weren't, the same kind of flow. I can't even listen to the first few episodes.
We're all our own harshest critics.
Yes, that's true. We're more stilted, more robotic, but definitely we've gotten used to each other. And just talking about sports cards comes more naturally. But looking into the future, like you kind of mentioned too, we have different segments, and I think we like to maybe of course podcasting is primarily audio, but we're always experimenting with video, and that might be a thing that we might really double down on, whether it's on YouTube or any other video platform, so people could see us. I think it was eye-opening for me, at least this past year. I put in an RSS feed, and this is kind of techie talk for podcasters, but that's what distributes the podcast to the different platforms. And I didn't know that YouTube had one, so I would put that in, and now it automatically uploads to YouTube. It's a static picture of the Cards to the Moon cover shot, and it's amazing to me that people listen to the podcast on YouTube. It's there's no video, there's not our faces aren't on it, but people listen to it different ways. So just exploring getting our podcast out there, and I think video is kind of appealing. So that's one thing for sure that we're going to double down on. And the other thing, I was just thinking about this too. Maybe it's a journalism background that I have personally, but I would love to get into more feature pieces, like whether it's a deep dive into a certain card or a deep dive into a collector's life, and make a like a longer piece. And that would be, I think, interesting if we could tell a story about whether it's a card or the collector. So that's kind of what I'm brainstorming right now.
I love that. And I hope that you can do that. I've thought the same thing. And what I've thought about is the chase. Like, I'd like to talk to someone about somebody who had a 2-year chase for just one card.
Yeah.
And, why they first wanted it, how does it fit into their PC in some way? The dead ends they hit, the frustrations, and then finally the acquisition. I think that would be, because we can all relate to that, regardless of the cost of the card, because sometimes somebody's trying to build an obscure set, and it might be some common player, but the card is out of 12 or something like that. And I think we like to hear those types of stories.
That'd be a great story. Yeah, for sure.
For sure. What do you collect specifically? Like, we know you like baseball, but do you have certain players? Do you go after sets? If somebody were to rummage through your cards, what would they see?
Yeah, I'm primarily like I like to create boundaries because you could go crazy with your collecting. So for me, it's rookie cards, on card autos, and I don't know if I mentioned this on the pod before, but because the market is generally down right now, I'm looking to just get some like Grail cards right now. That I feel like are good deals, and who knows in the future what they might be valued at, but just rookie cards of superstar players. That's what's most appealing to me. And then on the other side of things, because I'm a baseball card collector, occasionally I will do, or I will get into prospecting. So first boom and chrome autos.
Ugh.
Is, we have a dead wrong segment. I could go on with my dead wrong segment. That would be really long if I just even focused on first boom and chrome autos. Yeah. But maybe it's because I'm a huge baseball fan too. So you like cheering for some of the guys, and obviously it's Major League Baseball is a really hard league to break through, and not everyone's going to be a superstar. But there's some invested interest in it when I collect the first Bowman Chrome autos. So that's two sides of the spectrum, I guess.
Right, and even if someone does break through and has a borderline Hall of Fame career, somebody like Paul Goldschmidt, who when we talk about him 20 years from now, we will talk with him with reverence and being this great player and an MVP. Mm-hmm. His cards aren't worth anything. So sometimes what's happening in real life doesn't translate to what is happening in the hobby.
That's absolutely true. Then that's what we've learned too in the hobby. Like, you try to explain to people that are coming into the hobby. Some of my friends are getting curious and they think it's just, this player has great stats. And you have to explain, like, yeah, but they don't have a big fan base for whatever reason. Maybe they're boring, maybe they're just not interesting at all, and that impacts the value of their cards too, right?
But they were 23 instead of 19 when they came up, and forget it, they'll never get to 600 home runs.
They're too old.
Yeah. They're too old. They might as well just jump off a bridge.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
How have you seen? What kind of changes have you seen over the last few years? So since you started the podcast, where you are now, not necessarily in how you produce things, because but I mean in terms of like the hobby. Where was the hobby when you first started doing this? So if it was early, say the second quarter of 21, that's sort of when things first started to decline a little bit. So what kind of changes have you seen?
Yeah, the decline is real. But because of the decline, I think by and large, collectors have become much more savvy about what they go after. Before it was like, I could collect anything and I could just grade it and then flip it, or you just go for the next shiny thing. And now that cards have come down, but also some of the newer products, they're still expensive. So you don't want to invest in things like like Prism, even like the more modern Prism, and it's just not as fun to collect because of the price point is so high for a lot of new collectors. So I think we've become more savvy, and even in terms of the discussions we have on Cards to the Moon, it's more nuanced. It's like, why do people go after it? Why is this card not valued as much? And we just kind of dig deeper into that. So I think people are, generally speaking, the ones that have stayed in the hobby are definitely more knowledgeable about the hobby, and in some ways, when I go to card shows, it's harder to make trades now. And so that's you got to work things out with the person you're trying to trade with. But yeah, that's
it's the card ladder revolution, right? I mean, you pay $15 a month and you have access to everything that everybody else has access to, and you have to find other ways to get the cards that you want.
Excellent point. Yeah, for sure. Card ladder has changed the game in a lot of ways. Yeah, in terms of like the value of cards and population counts, and just people just it clicks for them automatically now. That's what they have to consider before buying, selling, trading cards.
Right. I feel like it gives the buyers and collectors like us some level of confidence that we didn't have before. When I was on your show last August or whenever that was, I made some crack about how I always felt like I was being taken advantage of as a kid when I went into the old school card shops, right? And they would say, I would go in there for an 85 Donruss, Kirby Puckett. And they would put all the good ones at the bottom of the pile and then hand me the one that would now get an OC designation. But I didn't care.
Right. Yeah.
But now we have the education. Like you said, we're much more educated. We have the nuance because we sort of have to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Great. Okay. Well, one of my favorite things about your show, and congratulations on 3 years. First
Thank
of all,
you so
that's
much.
it's no easy feat. Are the games that you play. And so I've got a few here that you and I are going to be doing as well.
Okay.
Where you usually are the Bob Barker of
Right.
of your show, in which you are asking the questions and you'll pitch in at the end, but you're making John and Hyung, you're making them answer first. So we're going to flip it, and I'm going to be asking you the questions now.
Okay.
And so we're going to be doing a few. First, 4 trivia questions. Then we're going to be doing a pick one, and ultimately I'm going to really turn the tables on you and make you pick a favorite player the way you make guests pick a favorite player on your show from Toronto.
Yeah.
Okay. So these are based around the timeline of your show, which is going on 3 years. Mm-hmm. So we have 4 questions here. Okay. So you ready?
Yep.
Here's the first one. Since Cards to the Moon debuted in June of 2021, the Los Angeles Angels have played 491 Major League games. Okay, so I'm going to give you a number. Out of those 491, of how many of those games do you think that Mike Trout has actually played?
Oh.
So I'm going to give you a number, and then we'll do an over-under. You're going to say over or under, which is one of the games that you play as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, so out of the 491 games as of the last game they played the other day, how many games over-under do you think Mike Trout has played? I'm setting the over-under at 250.
Under.
Yes, it's under. He's played 230 games out of 491.
250 was the number I was thinking, like at the halfway point, and he's probably below that, so that's why I said under right away.
It is. He's at 40. He's at 47%.
Oh, that's painful. And listeners of our podcast will know I have a first Bowman Chrome auto of Mike Trout, and I guess I'm holding it until he gets healthy and does something. So yeah.
He's so close. He's creeping so close to that 400 homer mark. He's already got the 3 MVPs.
Yeah.
When you think about it, when you think about someone like Mickey Mantle, his 1960s, almost the entire decade, he was just wrecked by injuries.
True.
He's not as good as Willie Mays, but he is viewed as being the player of that era.
Right.
So maybe once some distance happens between now and 2035, maybe Mike Trout will enter that as well. And
I hope so.
And Griffey too. Griffey's
true,
Griffey's 2000s when he was rocking the dad bod with the Cincinnati Reds uniform.
Yeah.
Right? He had 600 homers. He was fine. It's fine. Okay. Yeah. Here's the next question. According to Card Ladder, this is turning into a Card Ladder commercial. According to Card Ladder, what are the 3 most expensive cards that have sold since Cards to the Moon debuted in June of 2021? What are the 3 most expensive cards?
Oh, okay.
I'll give you a hint. They are all vintage.
Oh, really? Okay. I guess the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle's got to be up there.
Yep, that's number 1. The SGC 9.5,
SGC
the one that went for $12.6 million, is the highest one.
Yep.
And that was August of 22.
Okay. I feel like there's a Babe Ruth, the Baltimore News card.
Exactly, that's number 3. So that was just this past December.
Yeah.
So the 1914 Baltimore News it was an SGC 3, went for $7.2 million.
All right.
So here's the other hint. The other one was also August of 22. So it was about 2 weeks before the Mantle sold.
2 weeks before the Mantle sold. I want to say, I think I'm wrong with this, but Roberto Clemente. Did he have a high end sale?
He did, but it was not that one.
Okay.
It was not that one. It was a Hannes Wagner.
Oh, that's
T206 Wagner SGC2 went for $7.25 million. That was not the one that was ripped in half a year later.
Right.
It's still sold for like point something. So
that's crazy.
Good. Yeah, you nailed 2 of the 3.
Okay, that's when I do this when I do this with John and Hyung, Like they're always nervous because they're like, oh, and I'm kind of nervous too because I don't know if I'll know the answers. But all right, I seem to be doing okay.
I'll never forget when you had Denny's cards, when you had Denny on yours, and he ran the table, didn't he? He did like 5 for 5. It was incredible what he did.
That was funny. Yeah.
Okay, third one. There's 4. This is the third one. Mm-hmm. I listened to this yesterday, so this is how I know. In the very first episode of Cards to the Moon, a major hobby event took place in real time while you, Hyung, and John were recording. We know this because Hyung actually mentions it, and he says, this just happened. So I'm presuming he saw it on Twitter or maybe somebody texted him. So multiple choice. What was the hobby event that took place during your recording of your very first episode? And here are the 4. Was it A, Vegas Dave burning a Michael Jordan rookie? B, Whatnot making its offer of a Lamborghini for whoever pulled the LeBron triple logo man? C, BGS halting all grading submissions? Or D, Fanatics announcing it would be acquiring Topps?
Oh, when did that happen? So this is the first episode of Cards to the Moon?
Yeah, and you guys are just chatting, and you're talking about something, and John goes, oh, wait, blah, blah, blah just happened. And you're like, oh, okay. You're like, you could tell he had his phone on in the middle of all your recording, right? Yeah. And then it was one of those things, right? So it was either Vegas Dave burning the Jordan rookie, Whatnot offering a Lamborghini for whoever pulls the triple logo man, BGS halting all submissions, or Fanatics announcing it would be acquiring Topps.
I'm leaning towards, I think what would have really got our attention at that time is the Fanatics news that is acquiring Topps. But I can't remember if that was after 2021. So I'm going to go with my gut, Fanatics acquiring Topps.
Sorry, that did happen later on.
Oh, I knew it.
It was BGS halting grading. And you're having a discussion about how PCA was so completely backed up.
Right.
And it didn't matter how much you could make on flipping quick, because if you sent something in for the grade, it was going to be months before you got it back
to me. Yeah.
Right. And then Hyung goes, oh, they just stopped. BGS stopped too. And so BGS was also out at that point as well.
Jeez.
And then and SGC was not even part of the discussion at that point. It was
right.
This PSA or BGS. So
yeah.
Good. Okay. Last one. I'm going to list 4 active major leaguers. According to Card Ladder, the indexes on 3 of these players have gone up since your show came on the air, while just one of them has gone down. Which is the player whose cards overall has lost overall index value? So 3 are great, they're up, but 1 is down. So here are the 4 players. Was it Shohei Ohtani, Bryce Harper, Mookie Betts, or Juan Soto? Which of them has gone down? 3 of them have gone up.
Wow.
Since June of 21.
Okay, process of elimination. I feel like Shohei's only gone up, so I'm going to take him out.
He's out. He's gone up more than anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, and then the remaining is Juan Soto, Bryce Harper, or
Mookie.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Juan Soto's also getting a little bump now. No, wait. He was pretty high in 2021. Bryce Harper was low, and Mookie. You know what? I'm actually going to go with Juan Soto. I think
Correct.
It was so high during that time he had to kind of level off.
Exactly. Correct. Yeah, it's Juan Soto. He was so high.
Yes.
And he came so far down when he went to that death of a ballpark in San Diego. And,
right.
Where careers go to die. He came way down. And now he's creeping back up again since he went to New York.
Makes sense.
So, So Ohtani's up the most. And over the last year, Bryce Harper's way up as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's become this cult hero in Philly.
Makes
so
sense.
He's gone way up. And Mookie's just sort of steadily going up. He's just the slightest bit up, and Soto is just the slightest bit down.
Okay.
That's
it.
This
is a good question.
Good. You nailed it. Good train of thought.
Yes.
That was real Denny vibes there for how you talked your way through it.
Yeah, I had to talk out loud. Yeah.
Good.
No, that's fun.
All right. Okay, so I don't have the fun sound of the shuffling of the cards and the bell that goes with it, but we're going to do a pick one now. And for those of you who don't know how this works, it's funny that I'm explaining this, right? I will give 2 scenarios, and you can only get to pick one. Which one would you rather have?
Yes.
All right. So Cards to the Moon is going through some financial troubles. You have to pick one, John or Hyung.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm kidding. That's not my question. That's not my question. Especially because we know the real answer is Will. So,
Yes.
so here's
Will's
the
the
actual
star.
one.
Yeah.
So taking into account all factors, all variables. So financial variables, emotional variables. If you could only collect one of these players, would you collect Vlad Jr. or Bo Bichette? And yet I'm playing deliberately off your Toronto.
Yes.
Here.
I think I would have to go Vladdy. Just because, and I've had his card. I sold his card. Now, ironically, I have a Bo Bichette card and I still have it. But it's one of those things where if I'm going to hold for a while, who's the more fun player to watch? And Vladdy's a jokester, and I think he still has power, and he's more of the complete package to me anyway. So Vladdy, although it's very frustrating to watch my Blue Jays right now, but Vladdy is someone I would buy a uniform, like the jersey. I'll go with Vladdy this time.
I get it. I understand the frustration. I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan, and they are just they finally hit 500. They went back down. They can't get out of their own way whatsoever.
We're in the same boat.
Bo Bichette seems like one of those guys. It's hard to see anybody besides Freddie Freeman really challenging for 3,000 hits right now. But Bo was started so young.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to walk, and he loves to swing the bat.
Yeah.
He was getting so many hits, and he always seems to get a little bit hurt.
Yeah.
If you're thinking as a long-term investment, I don't know. Vlad seems a little bit like he's got some Prince Fielder vibes to me, which is he's good but
comp. Yeah.
Right. Whereas, if you could play the long game after a 20-year career, you could see Bo getting to 3,000 hits. But you're right, Vladdy is just so much fun. He has a good time out there. He can't field with a darn, but he's great to watch. And I think I might go that way as well. I think I'd go with Vladdy. All right.
Sweet.
All right. Last question, and then we'll let you go. But we can't let you go without this. So when you have guests on your show, you always ask them, who is your favorite Toronto athlete? And I was so excited to answer this last year when you had me on, and I went straight to Joe Carter. That was my answer.
Of course.
93, the game, the World Series winning home run.
Yeah.
Lovable guy, great dude, right? I chose the unfortunate handle of Iowa Dave for some reason. Well, because I live here and I just did it in 5 seconds, right? But
Right.
I'm born and raised St. Louis. So I'm going to ask you now. I'm going to turn to you.
Yep.
Who is your favorite St. Louis athlete?
Yeah, this one is easy for me because obviously baseball is what I gravitate to. And when I think St. Louis Cardinals, especially in my era when I watch baseball, it's got to be Albert Pujols.
Yeah.
Albert Pujols is the man. We talked about Trout earlier, and career longevity is also kind of a skill to me. And Pujols has been amazing in terms of just, of course he has had some injuries along the way, but, over 100 WAR, like that speaks to his longevity and just a storybook ending. Like I love that he came back to St. Louis one last time and then, chased down the home run record. Like it was a perfect, it should be a sports movie in the future. The career and life of Albert Pujols. So yeah, Albert Pujols he's the guy for me for St. Louis.
Congratulations, you win the game. He was the right answer. That was exactly it.
He was the only choice, yes.
And if he hadn't come back to St. Louis, he just would have been some guy who chased the money and was gone and left St. Louis fans bitter. But as soon as he hit the All-Star break in 22 and did the home run derby, and he starts blasting home runs and he's panting and he's sweating because he's 40, allegedly only 42 years old at that point.
Right.
But everyone's loving him. They're toweling him down and they're hugging him. And then he just goes on that big rip in the second half and crosses the 700 home run threshold. And that did it. That brought people back to him in the hobby for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't just, I was going to say, it wasn't just St. Louis fans. It was like everyone that enjoyed baseball was cheering for Albert Pujols at that point. So it was an awesome story.
Clark, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for all that you have taught me. When I got back into the hobby, I was listening to you and your friends talk, and I learned a lot. So thank you for all that you do with that. Just tell the listeners where they can find and on what days and when they can find Cards to the Moon.
Yeah, first, thanks, Dave, for inviting me on. This is a lot of fun. I love being invited on just to talk about cards. This is how the podcast started for us as well. So this is just more than a hobby to me now at this point. So yeah, I love talking about cards, and thank you for inviting me. But yeah, if you want to listen to our podcast called Cards to the Moon, we come out every Tuesday, and we've added a every other Friday show as well. And you can listen to our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Clark, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, it's really not that difficult. You want to have fun in this hobby, just talk about the cards. Clark and his co-host John and Hyung, they found the formula 3 years ago, and they have been just killing it ever since. I think that might have been one of the first ones I ever listened to, because it was just cool and fun, and they were laughing and making fun of themselves for making bad buys and talking about what if they had a $10,000, who would they buy? That sort of stuff. It was just three friends shooting the breeze about sports cards. So thank you, Clark, for coming on, and thank you for entertaining so many of us here over the last few years.
All right, let's finish off this episode with our regular weekly segment we call Pick One. And as usual, Hyung, do you want to start things off for us?
Sure thing. I'm gonna change it up a bit, do it a little different style because, I wanted to talk about one particular card.
Okay.
So the first card I have is a 2014 Topps Update, Mookie Betts. It's in the Walmart blue border parallel in a PSA 10. It last sold for $835. So I'm going to pair that up with a card that I wanted to discuss because I think it's a low-key underrated card, and I think it's eventually going to be a big card. So it's a good buying opportunity, in my opinion. So 2024 Topps Heritage Red Ink Auto out of 75, Juan Soto. Okay, his first Yankees auto, on-card Red Ink Auto. So the last raw sold on July 14th at $710. Okay, I personally believe that this card, 5-10 years down the road, is going to be a monster card. Obviously, for reasons such as I don't think Juan Soto has enough rookie autos. He doesn't even have enough cards, just in general in his rookie class, right? So second year, or sorry, not second year, but in a New York Yankees uniform, his first year in a New York Yankees uniform, I think is going to hold a lot of value based on what his career is going to project as a Yankee. Who knows? Maybe it's a short-lived. Maybe he's a lifer as a Yankee. No one knows, to be determined. But I think what he's doing in New York is like crazy with Aaron Judge. They're the legit Bash brothers. So I think this card is going to be a future monster, even though you're paying a lot of money for a non-rookie year card. I think there's a lot of potential at $700. So in saying that, and let me tell you, if you're into appeal, I think this card has crazy appeal because Juan Soto took his time signing these. And I remember somebody was mentioning Larry Walker is not a social media guy, but he posted on Twitter he signed about 1,000 cards, and you got to look at the Twitter post. It is all immaculate autos, just the most beautiful autographs. Larry Walker, shout out, Canadian, an amazing guy. He took us on this $30 million yacht this one time. I'll tell you a story later, but the Juan Soto Red Ink, his auto is amazing on that card particularly, and it has a lot of appeal as well. So that's what I'm pairing it up. Sorry for taking long. I got to give context on the Soto.
No worries.
$700, for a Red Ink 2024 first year Yankee uniform versus a 2014 Topps update Walmart border Mookie Betts PSA 10 at $835. What are you picking?
I feel like I know where you're leaning because you've been really advocating for the latter. I might be wrong, but I feel like that's where you're going. And, the long preamble is fine because my answer is really short and quick to the point. I'm sold on the Juan Soto. You sold me on that. So it's good. Red ink, check.
Did you see the card?
Numbered. Yeah, the Topps
and
Heritage.
the auto,
right?
yeah, the auto
the
too.
auto's
How
clean.
crisp. Yeah.
So I'm sold on it. Number to 75. I believe that he's going to re-sign with the Yankees. Like if I'm betting money, he's going to. Listen, Jays fans, the Blue Jays are going to be in the news and they're going to be, touted as a serious contender to get Juan Soto, but don't fall for it. We're always the bridesmaids. He's going to sign with the Yankees, okay? Long term, trust me. I'm episode 228 of Cards to the Moon. I called it. Okay.
I don't disagree.
So, unfortunately for Jays fans, but for those reasons, Juan Soto, I'm maybe I'll try to pick it up before this airs in case other people get the same idea.
That's why I was like hoping, man, I gotta buy a Juan Soto Heritage before the weekends. But I wanted to make a point. It's crazy because I think that Mookie Betts is super underrated and he's a buying opportunity now. But I would buy both, to be honest, because I think Mookie Betts, even at that price, $800 for a Walmart border, I would actually go after the Target red border for Mookie. I think it's so cheap. You could pick up a BGS. There's a nice one up there. I think that's a great buy. We're talking long term. Who knows? We're not looking at daily prices. We're talking about long term investments. I think that's a great card, and I also believe that this Juan Soto Red Ink is a great card. And I'm going to go Juan Soto for those reasons because he doesn't have great autograph cards in his rookie year. So this is a great second choice for me.
That's a good one. I like it. All right, mine. I feel like I was trying to make a point with this one too, but now I'm like, is it making a point? Because I could go either way. Okay, so Shohei Ohtani. All right, both cards Shohei Ohtani. First one is we just talked about the 2024 Topps Chrome set. In context of what Cage Lawyer was saying. But one of the hits that you can get from a hobby and jumbo box are the Topps Chrome Helix. I don't know if you saw those inserts. It kind of looks like Color Blast. That's what I thought of initially. I know a lot of others thought of that initially. But the 2024 Topps Chrome Helix insert, I believe they're case hits of Shohei. Last one sold for about $1,250. So they're typically going for $1,250, $1,300 right now, raw. Okay? Would you have that or a card of Shohei that's also $1,250 to $1,300? The 2017 Bowman Chrome Mega Box Refractor, which has him in the Japan uniform. BGS 10.
For $1,250?
Yep. Not black, but BGS 10 pristine.
Yeah.
And here's some added context because when I look deeper, I'm like, okay. I think there was a website that kind of estimates how many color or helix inserts there would be of each player. Right. They're saying maybe anywhere from between 100 to 200.
Okay, so super
based on
short
the odds. Yeah.
So it's like super short print.
Whereas the Mega Box of Shohei 2017 Bowman Chrome Mega Box, the total pop count according to Card Ladder is 3,000, just under 3,000. And there's 275 graded this BGS 10 pristine.
270 for that many. Yeah. That's surprising.
It was surprising to me too.
Oh, man. You know what? If this is what I'm realizing, at least right now, and this could be untrue next year or the year after, but what I'm realizing is that Ohtani has a massive fan base, like globally. And obviously he has to perform to keep this up. So there's always risk. But what I'm realizing is that people are buying up his every card.
Right.
Every nice card of Ohtani. So I don't think, although I think rookie cards or like early prospect cards are still the chase for always, I think more and more people are realizing the value of rare, just amazing eye appeal cards that, and especially in a Dodgers uniform. Like, to me, that's the selling point. Like, maybe before I would, like, as an OG, it's like the right answer is the mega box, right?
Yep.
As a collector. But the new hybrid version of me always loves the shiny stuff. And that card in a Dodger uniform, are you kidding me? Like,
it looks nice. Yeah.
That's legit. That's a legit card. And especially if the print runs at 100 to 200, I'm taking that all day. Like, I think that has potential to be bigger than the mega box card. I think the mega box card is a great card. I think that should be in every Ohtani collector or any baseball collector's piece. That should be a target. But this thing is a massive monster, I think, eventually in a Dodgers uniform. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad I brought this up because I thought initially when I did this, my point I wanted to make was like, come on, guys, BGS 10, mega box refractor, right? I'm like, anyone that chooses differently is, you don't know what you're talking about. But then as I started to look more into the details, I'm like, it's a super short print. The card looks nice. I'm a sucker for like, this is why I bought the home field advantage that first year it came out, because it's just so resemblance of like the downtown cards. But this is licensed, not. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna, collect the set. It's so cheap. Obviously, it didn't work out for me yet. These cards are still very cheap, and I think the problem with those first year that home field advantage came out again in Topps that looks like the downtown cards, they were case hits, but they produced a lot of them. So there's a lot of them out there, even though they were case hits. But I feel like with this being apparently a super short print, nice and shiny. Looks like the color blast, so that people are naturally gravitated towards it by the design. It's licensed, Dodgers uniform, all those reasons that you suggested and named yourself. I'm actually going for the Helix. I can't believe I'm saying this. I feel like it's, I don't know if because of the home field advantage experience, it's so new that there's still room. It could go down even more. But that being said, it's Shohei, right? So. I think Shohei might buck that trend. So we'll see. Anyway, I think that was a pretty good pick one from both of us today. So maybe we'll do a poll on both of these when this episode airs. All right, thanks again to all our listeners and subscribers. We appreciate you guys, and we'll have a brand new episode for you next week. Talk to you then. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.